Good morning, everyone. Good morning. There, that's great, awesome. My name is Neil Redding, and I'm the near futurist. And I help leaders realize the near future. And to my Brazilian friends, bom dia a todos. Estou muito feliz de estar aqui com vocês hoje. Is that all right? It's so great to be with you all at South by Southwest. And I want to start by connecting with all of you, with just a moment of connection. Because things have been really quite chaotic and scary recently, haven't they? I mean, it's so important for us to come together physically like this. But I've often felt like everything is on fire, both metaphorically and sometimes literally. It's been thrilling and exciting and dangerous and even devastating and tragic in all kinds of ways recently. But the status quo is burning down, sometimes intentionally being burnt down. Right? So I want to share a story about fire, one that helps me think of fire, relate to fire differently. Now, I've been fascinated with mushrooms for a very long time. And I'm obsessed with the most delicious ones. And of these, the morel is at the top of my list. So I've been in the woods foraging for morels many times over the years. And in my search for the best places to hunt for them, I've connected with a group that goes to the Sierra Mountains in California every spring. Right? This is where Yosemite is. It's a huge, expansive forest, amazing tall redwood trees. The experience of being there is just transformative. The aromas, the quiet sounds of life, the cool air mixed with the warm sunshine coming through the trees. And these forests have fires every year. And the way we know where to hunt for morels is actually to track where the fires were the previous year, because that's precisely where the morels show up in the greatest quantity. Why? Well, it's not fully understood, but it's clear that the stress and the chemical changes in the ecosystem cause this emergency mass fruiting of morels. Like they need to reproduce as much as possible while they can. Maybe it's a bit like us, if it feels like it's the end of the world, let's have massive sex and reproduction, right? But it turns out that this mass fruiting of morels actually helps the burned forest recover, right? It helps transform burned organic material into new nutrients that help the existing trees, as well as new saplings and microbes and all kinds of organisms flourish. So what is this story about, right? Fire can be destructive and even devastating in the short term, and yet it can lead to mass quantities of delicious food, as well as a rejuvenated ecosystem and more trees in the medium term. But the key to resilience and recovery is the ecosystem. This interdependent way living things work together to share resources and complement each other. So now what does this have to do with business? Well, despite everything changing faster than ever, most businesses are still trying to run like a well-oiled machine, right? They're built for predictability and managed top-down and tightly tuned for efficiency. But the 2025, this model is just too rigid, too fragile, too slow to adapt. And we can see the effects of this model breaking down all around us as control and predictability are just not available anymore. Return to office mandates and the struggle around them is a great example. Because when a system that isn't designed for change starts to change, it creates friction, creates disconnection. In fact, there's a recent Gartner study that showed that nearly 3/4 of HR leaders said that RTO mandates were actually creating more conflict, making things worse, not driving more connection. And these mandates actually damage organizational culture, right? They undermine trust and belonging often, and they drive higher performers to quit, for sure. And from a practical perspective, very few companies saw collaboration actually improve when they mandated return to office. And in fact, a full third of them saw their belonging scores decrease. But the bottom line is that RTO is trying to force physical presence. I mean, it's just great when it's voluntary, right? Here we are. But forcing people together does not create collaboration. But if we look beyond business, at systems that have mastered adaptability, we see the answer. Because nature thrives through participation, this decentralized, deeply connected participation of diverse species, like we've seen with morels and trees in the forest. And this participation is out of control. Right? There's no centralized control or management, and yet it produces these beautiful, dynamic, resilient systems that adapt and evolve in real time. Participation is the key. It's the key to health and resilience of natural ecologies. Right? It's the key for humans, individually and in teams, for well-being and a sense of belonging. And it turns out participation is the key for AI on our teams, in our workflows, in our businesses, to maximize AI's full potential, to unlock it, as well as our own. In fact, AI has been an active participant in this talk. So here's something to process. Peter Diamandis has said there are two kinds of businesses that will exist at the end of this decade, which is 5 years away now, right? Two kinds. Those that are fully utilizing AI and those that are out of business. Now, it has the feel of hyperbole, yes, but if we look at the market, we can see that VCs and big tech and the markets in general and even governments are investing like they believe in this. And many believe it's not just a generational shift or even something as big as the internet, but that it's more comparable to the discovery of fire. Because AI seems to be changing fundamentally what the nature of human capabilities is, even what it is to be human. In my experience and conversations with the C-suite recently, many of them seem to be a bit stuck. They're waiting for McKinsey or BCG or Deloitte, right, to show them the way. But the reality is, as great as these consultancies are, they don't know either, because they haven't yet run AI-driven businesses themselves. And this is important. I want you all to get this, right? You need to know and understand humans to run a business of humans, and you need to know and understand AI to run an AI-driven business. Because AI isn't just a tool. It's something new. So I think there's a better model for understanding and framing what AI is. Now, AI is behaving like a new species in a number of ways. Right? It's interacting and reasoning more like humans than like tools. It's disrupting business ecosystems and compelling them to evolve rapidly. Now, when a new species arrives in an ecosystem, there are multiple ways this can go. We've all heard of invasive species, right? Ones that arrive from a foreign ecosystem and then cause lots of damage when they arrive. Reminds me of big tech, announcing mass cuts of mid-level engineers as AI arrives to replace them. It's happening this year. There are parasite species, ones that damage or even kill the host as they flourish. It reminds me of social media algorithms sometimes, right? That are AI harvesting human attention to the detriment or even the zombification of the host, right? But then there are symbionts. And the way I've positioned symbiont, it kind of feels like a Goldilocks thing, right? And it kind of is. This is Midjourney's imagining of the Hawaiian bobtail squid. And it looks really cute, right? And it actually is this cute. These are photos of the Hawaiian bobtail squid. And it has a symbiotic relationship with this bioluminescent bacteria, which the squid provides a habitat for the bacteria. It's this little pouch you can see, especially on the left there. And the bacteria emit light that helps the squid avoid predators when it's out. So how could AI be in a symbiotic relationship with us as humans? A relationship that benefits both species. Well, who's experienced AI as a great thought partner? Right? Almost all of us. It's a good start. But I can imagine some of you saying, well, this is a symbiosis. How does AI benefit from its relationship with humans? And if this is your question, I love you and your question. And we'll get to that in a bit. But for now, let's just say we've given AI just about everything we humans have ever created. So maybe it benefits in that way. We hear failure modes discussed in business all the time, right? How they struggle, how they fall behind, how they fail to adapt. I want to talk about success. What is the success mode for businesses responding to this new species? What does it look like for your business to not just survive, but thrive? Because in 2025, even more than before, there's a fire hose of new possibilities arriving every week. And you're going to need 3 things to drink from this fire hose. And my commitment is to provide these to you by the end of this session. 3 things. The first is a relevant mental model, right? To understand the near future of AI and how it relates to business. The second is a resonant narrative. Not just some idea of the bigger picture, but a narrative of the future that we want to co-create. And then thirdly, you're going to need practical actions, right? Everyday ways to develop your relationship with AI and generate increasing value for yourself and your business. So let's start with the mental model. Now we need to learn more about the species. And we're going to just keep it simple by focusing on species of AI that are designed for human engagement, because there's a lot of species of AI, to be sure. And we're going to cover this evolution in 5 stages. The first evolutionary stage is prompt. Now, we all know what this means, right? It's ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini and Perplexity and Midjourney and DALL-E and Runway. It's all the tools we've been using the past few years, right? AI sits there waiting for a human to prompt it to do something. So far, mostly in the form of written text. So we all know what prompting is. The second evolutionary stage is participate. And I want you all to leave with this essential mindset of participation. If you take nothing else away from this talk, I want you to take this away. Because we're really entering the sweet spot of this stage right now. We're seeing AI participation show up in all kinds of early nascent ways, like you'd expect to see with the rapid evolution of a new species. Many of you have seen this, right? I could like to call this the dawn of AI participation. This is from last summer. But a ChatGPT user posted this to Reddit. Did you just message me first? Right, and OpenAI stated at the time that this is a bug, but this was just PR spin, right? Because in their lab, the models were no doubt already doing this. But let's look at a few practical examples of participation. I want to start with something simple and yet very powerful. So I asked ChatGPT, based on what you know of my work and the talk I'm building, what do you think the impact is that I want to create? So I'll just call out a few points in response. You want leaders to realize that reality itself is participatory and that AI, business, and humans are all participants in shaping it. Secondly, you want to move executives beyond seeing AI as just a tool to instead recognize it as a co-creator in their business ecosystems. Thirdly, you want executives to embrace participation, not just passively waiting to be disruptive, right? And then fourthly, I love this one. This really gets me. You want to counter scarcity-driven dystopian narratives with a abundant symbiotic view and vision of AI, business, and human collaboration. So what do you think? Any of you know me and my work? Does this sound like me? I mean, I love this. It really reflects back how I think and what I'm working on. So it gets better every day, right? As I've been sharing and evolving my work and practice with ChatGPT participating. And now it's super easy to get AI to prompt you at a specified time, right? This is what ChatGPT's tasks does. It was rolled out last January. And so last January when it came out, I immediately said, please take everything you know about me, my 2025 plans, what I'm building, and create an inspired, strategically aligned, and immediately actionable suggestion every morning at 8 a.m. So I've been getting this every day the last few months. I wanted to call out one of these recently, that showed up recently, because I really quite like it. Today, distill your vision of AI as a new species into a single compelling insight that reshapes how leaders think about their business. Make it practical yet profound. So every day, I get this kind of push. It's like a coach, right? But this is true participation in my R&D work, in my work generally. So imagine what you could do if you haven't done this yourself. Highly encourage you to check this out. It's still a pretty basic example. So let's look at something much more substantial. Now, many of us create and analyze and review strategy and framework diagrams all the time, right, as part of our work. And AI's participation in this can really be a big boon. Now, this is an approach diagram from our near future framework one-pager, and I just want to orient you to it really quickly before I have AI analyze it. So the way I describe near futurism is connecting emerging possibility with practical immediate value for brands and businesses, the clients that we work with, right? So this diagram shows that we start on the left with the practical state of the business, what's the brand, what's the company state, goals, challenges, business model. On the right, we look at possibilities, which are, as a technologist, I'm really focused on what is emerging technology driving in terms of new capabilities, right? In terms of AI and spatial computing and Web3 and robotics and so on. And then these come together as practical possibilities. We use AI, of course, to help match these two areas, practical and possible. And that this is an iterative cycle, right? That we use these to surface ideas and then churn through them and surface the ones that are most promising. So that's an orientation to this. And so I asked ChatGPT's O3 mini model, pretended, I'm someone, I just attended Neil's keynote, I got this diagram, can you help me understand it? So really briefly, you can see that this model, and this is a more recent reasoning model, right, if you haven't checked it out, O3 mini, not expensive to use either. It can interpret the structure and the elements of the diagram. It gets that there are these two poles, practical and possible, that they come together as practical possibilities. It gets that there's this iterative cycle, and it ultimately understands that the intent of the diagram is to help business leaders not just jump on every buzzword blindly, but also not miss out on opportunities as they emerge. So in many different ways, the analysis was really, really spot on, and I had not briefed it on this diagram first. So I'm really impressed. I think you guys should be impressed. This is really, really valuable for all this kind of work that we do. So since this is our framework, I wanted to push the model a little bit. So I said, that's good to know, diagram is clear. Can you give me 2 to 3 suggestions for how to improve it, right? Especially in terms of clarity and effectiveness for an executive audience. So I just want to call out the 3 examples that we got. So the first one was add a clear so what, or an outcome statement. Okay, I'll add a so what, fair enough. Highlight the flow and steps more distinctly. Sure, we can always improve on that. This is an earlier version of the diagram, so it's actually been iterating since then. And then tie each step to a tangible executive priority. All really great, great feedback. So by having AI participate in your strategic work, it's not just helping you execute, right? It's making you a better thinker, better communicator. It's perhaps easiest to understand example, maybe the most fun, is just to have ChatGPT's mobile app participate in your daily life, in the physical world.
Hey, yeah, so I thought I'd just try hanging out in my office with you, see what you might notice. Here's something interesting. What do you think of this?
It looks like a cozy office setup. I notice you have your Apple Vision Pro on the desk. Are you thinking about using it for work right now?
Actually, are you sure it's not a pair of ski goggles? I mean, that's what it looks like to me.
It definitely has that sleek, reflective design that would remind someone of ski goggles. But I'm pretty sure it's your Apple Vision Pro.
Yeah, okay, so seriously, it is. And yeah, I'm planning to keep using it today as an ultra-wide virtual display. It's got like 3 4K displays side by side. And then yeah, when I'm done, I'll be kicking back and watching movies and stuff. So glad to know you know what it is. Chat soon.
So we used to wonder and speculate about facts and things in the world, right? And then there was Google, and we got instant answers. But this is that for the physical world. And as AI gets good at recognizing and interacting with the physical world, there are all kinds of exciting use cases that we've been imagining for many, many years. One of the things that I was personally most excited about, I wrote about this 5 or 6 years ago, this idea that everything we see in the world could be immediately shoppable, right, just by looking at it. And this is starting to make that possible by being able to identify and have a conversation about things. Imagine helping retail store associates or warehouse workers, get familiar with a new space and what's in it and how it works. All kinds of use cases. But if you haven't already, highly encourage you to go around town today and try this out. I guarantee it'll be surprising and a great addition to your daily life. And then, we have to talk about vibe coding, right, as a form of participation with AI or having AI participate. Because, this is where things are right now. It's actually quite an exciting thing we can do. So this morning, I actually woke up and said, I'd love to have an app that will identify 3 new capabilities in AI this week and connect them in a visual way, a really simple and beautiful app to my financial services business. What can I do with what's emerging this week? So as this happens, right, and this is part of an ongoing session, because this is code for a web app, right, you can examine the code, learn to edit the code yourself, keep going back and forth with the LLM, this is Claude, to modify and enhance it. You can host it at a URL, and point other people to it. You could hand it off to a developer. You could just keep vibing with it, right? But by the time it produces this, you get this very, very useful and simple little app. And this kind of thing is really, really useful. Imagine what you could do in your own work, to just spin up a little piece of functionality like this based on an idea, right? Sometimes the ideas we have are better expressed through some kind of interactive functionality. So what, right? You get the idea. But I want us all up to speed on this participation thing today when we leave, which is why I'm using such easily accessible examples. Because this stage is a critical stepping stone to everything else that the Agentic Era promises. And it's preparation for managing AI employees, which are coming very soon to a theater and a business near you. But the third I'm calling Delegate, the third evolutionary stage. And each of these stages builds on the previous one. And the delegate stage is where the Agentic Era really begins. Because you can only delegate to someone or something that can really be trusted to take a brief and run with it, right? That can have agency over it. And spoiler alert, today's agents are really not quite ready for prime time, although we're getting very close. So both OpenAI and Anthropic have introduced agents that can use a computer, right? Claude can actually use your computer, and both can use a computer in the cloud. But these are really just directional indicators. I mean, they don't work well enough yet to be trusted to produce outcomes reliably. And frankly, having a model that still hallucinates, use my computer, is unnerving, even to me, right? But these were quickly superseded by so-called deep research. Right? OpenAI and then Perplexity and then Google all released deep research just last month in February. And the idea is you give this agent, this AI, a brief, and after searching and reasoning for a while, it comes back with a report with citations and references. So some quickly concluded that it's not very good, right? But OpenAI admits that it can still hallucinate facts, make incorrect references, and struggle to distinguish valid information from rumors. So it's worth being a little skeptical still. But I thought Perplexity might do well with this because it has a lot of credibility, validly sourcing references that it provides. So the question has arisen a lot in recent years, in my circles anyway, and I think the market generally. Big tech and others have been investing tens of billions of dollars a year in XR and spatial computing. Like, why aren't we hearing more about the business impact? So Perplexity came back with a report painting a very rosy picture, businesses adopting XR all over the place. And then I looked at the sources it references, and it was mostly PR and marketing from the hardware makers. So I did what you do with a human, right? Like an intern that returned a report like this. I said, I have these doubts based on your sources, redo the report and only use credible industry standard analyst sources. By the way, check out the chain of thought log in these deep research models or reasoning models if you haven't before. It's really fascinating to see what is the thought process that these models go through. Super helpful when evaluating assignments that you've given to them. So what came back was a report, simple PDF format, grounded in analyst data from Gartner and IDC and other reputable sources, right? With a more nuanced perspective. For those of you interested, showed how the VR contraction that's been happening is really a shift to mixed reality, references all of its sources. So while I wouldn't bet my business decisions on this kind of output, it's certainly better than what Meta's Galactica LLM was producing in late 2022. But we know from biological evolution that most mutations fail to produce anything valuable. And the same is true of AI sometimes. Now, ChatGPT remains the gold standard for deep research, although it's only been out for a month. So I said to it, Peter Diamandis says, we've got to be fully utilizing AI by 2030 or be out of business. So based on this, what are the top 3 to 5 actions I should be taking now as a CEO of my Fortune 500 company? And after a couple iterations, and I'll spare you the details of the interaction, but we got this concise list. So invest in high-impact AI, upgrade data and infrastructure, build AI talent and culture, embed AI across business units, implement AI governance and risk controls. No mention of ethics there, but I think it's probably implied. And then drive AI adoption with executive urgency. Right? Make AI a board priority, fast-track pilots, all of this. Act now or risk falling behind. We already know these things. But are we actually doing them? Because all the data still show a significant gap. This recent Morgan Stanley report showed that majority of CIOs don't plan to launch LLM-based functionality until later this year or sometime next year or even further out. AI transformation is hard, right? Even when you have endless capital and the kind of market domination that Apple has, as we've seen recently with Siri. And this is not just a new enterprise software suite or even a new hybrid way of working like we had to invent during the pandemic. This is something fundamentally new and different. And we need time and interactive experience to develop our knowledge and understanding of it. So with that in mind, I decided to push a little further. So I asked, what 3 things do you think would actually surprise me? Maybe things that I haven't heard that I should be doing. So I got a few interesting ones, right? If your industry is not training AI models to shape customer expectations and pricing, you're already at a disadvantage. Is my industry doing this? I mean, not sure, might have to investigate. Are we using AI to orchestrate workflows? Because companies that do this are already outperforming traditional hierarchies, according to this. In logistics especially, 90% of companies are using, 90% of daily operations use AI-led scheduling and task delegation with fewer middle managers and greater efficiency. So that's interesting. This one is the most interesting, I would say. AI could wipe out key parts of your revenue model or create entirely new profit centers that you haven't thought of. Those are both very fascinating. So again, deep research can be a strong thought partner when you push it. But like a human, don't be surprised if it doesn't come back with great results at first. Like, you need to stick with it a bit. And that said, if OpenAI is going to sell its forthcoming $20,000 a month agents, right, they're going to have to get really great at producing reliable results. Now, I'm not going to get into how to build your own agents today, but there are workflows, right, which we've been able to build in Zapier and things like this for years, right, just automating workflows that can start to include LLMs and APIs for AI models. But what's new is agents that are using LLMs to reason and interact with tools in their environment to direct and control the flow. And again, you'll really want to be familiar with and understand deeply how these advanced reasoning models work as you start building your own agents, if and when you decide to do that. And there are loads of early agentic frameworks and APIs and promises that they all make that you can and should experiment with them when you're inclined, right? And we can help you sort through them as well. So again, I want you all to get familiar with what it is to delegate to AI, what it feels like, where the limits are. Because it's fair to say if you have employees or business partners or coworkers that some of them are going to be AIs this year. And over time, we'll be delegating a wider and wider range of tasks to AI. Now, stage 4 is when AI starts to initiate activity. And be warned, this is when it gets a little weird. Because AI is perceiving and acting on its own, right? This is really proper agency. And it's the foundation for the auto-evolving business. And the initiate stage has actually been real for years. It's just not evenly distributed. Because finance pioneered early AI initiation going back to at least year 2000. They were using machine learning models to do algorithmic training and new financial instruments and rebalancing portfolios, things like that. And social media has been initiating for a long time as well, right? Algorithms don't just respond to our actions. They predict and influence and shape them. And similar in cybersecurity and ad targeting and customer intelligence and many other areas. But we're starting to see the initiate behavior show up in our daily work. And Superhuman is one of the first email apps to initiate or auto-draft emails, replies to many emails, using your tone and voice. And it's soon going to be auto-sending emails as well. I'm having a moment of trepidation here, thinking of how many emails I wish I hadn't sent over the years, But can you imagine the initiate stage expanding to every business function? Because that's what we're going to see unfold this year. And the functions of a chief of staff, even, are all primed to be taken over by AI starting this year. Few examples, right? Executive decision briefings. You can see how this would naturally flow out of the kind of functionality we're seeing from deep research. Draft board presentations, right? These models haven't shown them today, but maybe you've seen them be able to generate better and better structural diagrams and tables and all kinds of data that would be relevant to that kind of presentation, as well as slides. Executive talent strategy is something that, as strategy in general, these models, especially the reasoning models, are getting much better at being able to do. Track regulatory and risk compliance as it relates to executive leadership. I mean, these are all just a subset of what you'd expect a chief of staff to do. But I'm referencing chief of staff because it is a high-level leadership function that we're going to see start to be taken over or augmented and eventually be able to be taken over by AI. And if all this feels like a lot, if it induces a little vertigo, you're not alone. And it gets weirder I mean, this is Mizuki. This is an AI agent operating on the Solana blockchain. It's a cybersecurity watchdog. It autonomously identifies and exposes security vulnerabilities in cryptocurrency projects. It's acting without human prompts, and it has a profile on X, right? And in addition to being weird, these agents are also completely legit, some of them, right? This is AIXBT, delivers sophisticated market analysis and intelligence in real time, tracks over 400 key opinion leaders, surfaces trends, and it runs on the Coinbase blockchain called Base, so it has direct access to the whole cryptocurrency world, and it actively engages on X and makes strategic decisions. The AI and blockchain luminary and South by speaker Sandy Carter published this Forbes piece back in January, calling AIXBT a game changer in the market intelligence space. 500,000 followers, and it's an agent. All of this is pretty crazy, which is why I want to take a moment to underscore that
reality itself is shifting. And for my Brazilian friends, a própria realidade está mudando.
Reality itself is shifting. I mean, for our entire lives, for as long as anyone can remember, right, for the history of civilization, we've known that humans are the dominant species on the planet. And for the first time in eons, perhaps ever, we're experiencing the rise of a new species that's a peer to us in many ways. Challenging this notion of human supremacy. I don't think this is sunk in yet, that what it is to be human is shifting. And on the everyday, right, AI and spatial computing can simulate almost anything. I mean, facts and information are becoming more and more slippery and elusive. Business and markets are increasingly shaped by AI's participation, just to name a few ways that reality is shifting. And how do we feel about this? I often find it more than a little disconcerting and even destabilizing. But the good news, the actually really great news, is that reality is inherently participatory. In other words, participation creates reality. It's not objective, separate from us. It's co-created at the most fundamental levels. I mean, quantum mechanics is the most rigorously tested scientific theory we have. And the way one leading quantum theorist puts it is that we live in a participatory universe in which our questions and observations define reality and even bring it into existence. And then there's neuroscience, which has been advancing very rapidly in recent decades. And this neuroscientist, Anil Seth, gave a TED Talk a few years ago in which he stated that we're all hallucinating all the time. When we agree about our hallucinations, we call that reality. According to Seth, we actively construct our perception of the world through a combination of sensory input and past experiences. So at the most fundamental level, what we experience as reality is not fixed. It emerges through participation as a co-created thing. And we've had the notion that technology actively participates in the creation of reality for quite a while, too. In 2010, Kevin Kelly published a book called What Technology Wants, in which he argued that technology drives its own evolution. It has its own purpose, its own desired outcomes. And he talked about printing press and electricity and the automobile and communication tech and the internet and AI, and described how each has what he calls its desires, what it wants, how it participates in co-creating that reality, that outcome. And doesn't it feel like AI has a life of its own? We can kind of feel it pulling itself into the future. And of course, when McLuhan says that we shape our tools and our tools shape us, he's referring to this same idea. So yes, reality is participatory. We co-create it through participation. And technology is participating along with us. This is great, empowering news. And it's also an urgent framing, because AI is aggressively driving its own evolution, aggregating resources and capital and regulatory and government alignment, so there really is no more time to wait on the sidelines. This is why I'm so focused today on making it super clear how all of us can participate, can work with AI, because it's not just a business imperative, it's a humanity level imperative. So for AI to fully participate in reality, in co-creating reality, to reach its full potential, it really needs access to the physical world. And this is why all the big AI companies have investments and R&D in this space. NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang recently showcased his vision for physical AI, presenting this world foundation model. Right? This is architected to take in images and text and generate action so that robots can use AI to participate in the world. And it's trained on 20 million hours of video of physical things and behaviors. So the AI is taught to understand the physical world. And the vision is that every factory has a digital twin, right? A real-time simulation that represents everything physical about the space. And each robot's AI will use the digital twin plus what its sensors detect to reason and decide on its next move. Now, I want you to see this briefly so you have it in mind. Now, watch for the description of the robot's brain, the digital twin, and the way each robot decides its next action.
The robot's brains are in a simulation of a physical warehouse, digitalized into Omniverse using OpenUSD connectors to aggregate CAD, video and image to 3D, LiDAR to point cloud, and AI-generated data. The fleet of robots execute tasks by perceiving and reasoning about their Omniverse digital twin environment, planning their next motion and acting. The robot brains can see the resulting state through sensor simulations and decide their next action.
So this is what's needed for AI to participate fully in manufacturing and distribution, which is around $30 trillion of the world's GDP, right? And the same applies to autonomous vehicles and humanoid robots, right? They're all robots using AI and simulation to reason about the world. And we have to take a moment to mention humanoid robots, because they seem to be showing up everywhere in recent months. I don't know if you've seen them as well. But I guess it's because the big tech leaders all believe what Jensen believes.
The ChatGPT moment for general robotics is just around the corner.
The ChatGPT moment for general robotics is just around the corner. Well, let that sink in. I mean, what does that mean? How do we feel about this? And in the world of wearable spatial computing devices, AI is becoming very actively engaged with where you are, exactly what you're looking at, what you're doing, how you're feeling. And this is Meta's Project Aria Gen 2, just revealed last week.
Aria Gen 2 determines your location, both indoors and outdoors. Advanced eye tracking camera tracks your gaze to understand what you're looking at, and tracks your hand to identify the object you interact with, all while monitoring your heart rate for a comprehensive understanding of your well-being.
Your well-being, comprehensive understanding of your well-being. In the next couple of years, of course, we'll see glasses that are enabling AI to participate in our visual experience of the world, augmenting what we see with virtual content and objects, right? This is Meta's Project Orion. But I agree with Sam Altman. I mean, AI needs a new way to interact with us as humans, purpose-built kind of device. And I'm super curious whether he and Jony Ive of Apple and iPhone fame can come up with a form factor that we haven't seen yet. Of course, OpenAI is also getting close to custom AI chips and robotics. And of course, you can already have a conversation with AI with Meta AI specifically while wearing their Ray-Bans. And while other leading wearables aren't quite there yet, the trajectory is clear. And it's frankly astonishing how far all this has evolved since I was on this stage last year. I mean, last year I showed you this work we did with Alki Labs, and all of this content was generated by hand and placed into 3D space by hand, which is how XR has worked for decades. And now this is increasingly being done by AI with a digital twin of the space, as with the NVIDIA examples. AI can dynamically create contextually appropriate content and objects in a personalized way, like these kind of promotions that are precisely located in space and designed for a particular shopper in a grocery context. So we've seen how this new species we're calling AI has evolved from something we prompt to something that participates, to something we can delegate to something that initiates action on its own and in the physical world. And all of this evolution is happening at an incredibly accelerated pace now. So where is it headed? And of course, there's lots of conversation about AGI and ASI, general and superintelligence, as if these are the end game. Well, from a business perspective, when AI has access to everything digital and everything physical about all of the participants in a business, the humans and the information and the workflows and the workspaces and the supply chains and manufacturing and distribution and the products and the customers, and as AI is increasingly trusted with strategic decision-making as well as day-to-day execution, we can see how businesses can become autonomous, run by AI and robotics, and in some cases with little to no human intervention. In fact, this is Sam Altman's ultimate stage for AI, right? Businesses that are entirely run by AI. But we need more than just autonomous businesses, autonomous organizations, right? I mean, there are things that do change very rapidly, things that should be handled by AI, right? Market conditions and costs and prices and weather and climate and pandemics and news and, of course, technology itself, all of which require businesses to adapt in real time to remain competitive. And then there are things that change slowly. Most importantly, people, right? And what we need to thrive. Sense of belonging and nourishment and participation and fulfillment. And if we truly want a thriving, abundant future, we need business to not only be aligned with all of this, but also much more aligned with natural ecosystems. But I believe humanity is awakening into seeing everything as connected. This is the ecosystem paradigm. And it turns out to be a huge unlock for all kinds of problem solving and solution building. So in our work with business leaders, we use this lens to create adaptive, resilient business models that can evolve and thrive amid constant change and increasing turbulence. So the final stage of AI's evolution is symbiosis. Now, this is straightforward to imagine. We've seen how GPTs can understand and interact with humans, having been trained with human data. And there's a lot of super promising work underway training AI models on a wide range of biological species and natural ecologies. Just like NVIDIA's World Foundation model is trained on millions of hours of video relevant to robotics. I mean, imagine deploying a suite or a set of physical agents to solve a type of pollution or other kind of local problem in a measurable way. Can we design for symbiosis? So the auto-evolving business is more than an autonomous organization. Yes, it's a financially successful, sustainably growing collaboration of humans and AI, and it's an organism that continuously, automatically evolves into greater and greater alignment with all the ecosystems it's connected to. In other words, it's a symbiont with the planet. And this is not separate from business. This is business. Because for us to have a thriving, abundant future, even near future, we need to be building towards symbiosis now. And even if all we're concerned about is our own thriving, human thriving, we need to be building towards symbiosis with AI. Because what AI wants is clearly everything. So our work with business leaders is grounded on the mental model of participation and the narrative of symbiosis. And these are the foundation for rapid evolution and disruption resilience for yourself in this age of AI, for your business, and for our thriving, abundant future. Now, often you'll go to these talks or read these predictions or get these foresight insights, and what's possible is really exciting, but it doesn't overlap with what's practical for your business. In fact, it's pretty far from it. But near futurism is connecting the possible with the practical, because it's where these two overlap that the real magic happens, that business transformation can happen. So I do believe we've discovered a new kind of fire, this new species called AI. I also believe it is prompting us to co-create a new reality for ourselves, for our businesses, for our lives, for humanity. And if we all show up and fully participate, a thriving, abundant future awaits us. Thank you. I think we're doing Q&A, yeah? Awesome. All right, thanks everybody for your questions. So, if businesses become auto-evolving, this is a good question. What happens to corporate accountability? Who is responsible when an AI-driven decision goes wrong? This is a great question, and I think there's a lot of activity exploring and strategizing, imagining how this can work. It's definitely the whole world of legal liability and accountability is shifting. And I'll just say that most of this is TBD. We're figuring it out. But it's very important in the work that we do to look at what are the guardrails that can be put in place around AI decision making and to ground those actually in the well understood and shared at executive leadership level purpose and guiding principles of a company. So that's important work to do. You say AI is a new species, but important pieces of biomimicry theory are missing. Can you talk more about your vision and why biology is a useful model? So yeah, I mentioned in the talk that there's a way in which AI has this feeling of being alive, that it's evolving rapidly, much more so than the way we've seen traditional things evolve. And I find that biology is just the best metaphor. It's certainly not a perfect analogy, but the way AI is evolving and what it's able to do and how tightly and how much, the extent to which it mirrors how humans operate and other living things operate is why I think it's a useful model. How do you see the near future implications of agentic AI for geopolitics? Right, we're going to wade right into the deep end here. How to mitigate the impact of rogue agents? This is, I would just underscore that this is a very important question and just acknowledge that, you know, it's very interesting that perhaps the most important discovery since the discovery of fire is showing up at this time of unusual geopolitical turmoil, right, among countries that are powerful beyond precedent, right? with military and nuclear power and all this kind of thing. So yeah, I think it's an open question that we really need to show up and participate in discovery and sort of co-creating the outcome. I mean, a lot of what I'm here to present is really to surface the importance of these questions rather than answer them. But I think it's great that we're asking these questions. We have to ask these questions. And I look forward to working with all of you, as many as possible, to answer these questions. So, do you envision a future where AI completely runs a company without human intervention? Absolutely. I mean, I think, like I mentioned, autonomous organizations, autonomous businesses are essentially here. In fact, a friend of mine has an autonomous business already running that she created a few years ago. And that was not using the latest reasoning models, right, the latest LLMs, but it's possible to autonomize a business already. And so I think that autonomous businesses are going to be able to be trusted with more and more as we figure out these questions about guardrails and safety, for sure. When do you think agentic AI will become mainstream and used by most people on a daily basis? So what I tried to show in this talk is that there are lots of forms of early agentic AI. You know, OpenAI and others, you know, Perplexity and Google are all calling their deep research products or offerings, their functionality, they're calling them agents. And they're early stage because you can't really give them a brief like a business plan level brief and let them run with that just yet. But you can give them a brief in the form of, like the examples we showed, like give me a report about this topic. I want it to have these qualities, these outcomes. And there'll be interaction, right? The model will ask you for clarity about certain questions and so on as it proceeds. So I think it's becoming mainstream this year, used by most people. The thing that comes to mind actually at the moment is Alexa Plus is something Amazon has announced not that long ago. And it is quite, I mean, they're positioning it as an agentic capability. There's a lot of things that it can do that people do every day. Grocery shop, book reservations at a restaurant or a flight. We saw those kinds of things in the operator demo from OpenAI back in January. But I think Alexa Plus, from everything that I've heard from the folks building it, is much more likely to actually be useful as an agent that can serve our daily needs because of everything they've invested in it, how they've built it, how intertwined it is with the whole Amazon and Prime ecosystem, and also just how well distributed this is. I mean, Alexa Plus is going to be on everyone's phone, as well as all the Echo hardware devices, the hundreds of millions of them, I think, that are still in people's homes. So whether that's a way to actually build your own agents, I don't expect that. That's not what they're doing. That's a consumer product. But I think that is a kind of agentic AI that will really make a huge difference for people. So we've just got 2 minutes left. Let's see, what is the best question here? What is the benefit to AI and the symbiotic relationship with humans? Yeah, so it was a little bit tongue-in-cheek. What I said in the talk is that AI, you know, we've given AI just about everything we've ever created in the form of digital content and now increasingly, as I mentioned, you know, access to the physical world. So there's a lot there. I don't know, when we talk about benefiting AI, the question, I think, this is why I was a little bit tongue-in-cheek, is does it make sense to think of AI as an entity that can benefit? I think it is, you know, for narrative purposes, for kind of rhetorical purposes. And I do think, actually, as we start to trust AI with more and more capability, more and more agency, right, that we're naturally going to anthropomorphize a bit and think of it as something that does benefit from interacting with us, from what we give it, so that it can actually better fulfill the intents and outcomes that we want from it, you know? So I think that's it, right? Thanks everyone for being here. Really great to see you. Have an amazing rest of your day.